What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some more new Shadow Pokemon in the Open Great League with Corviknight, Haxorus, and Reshiram. Now you might have already noticed looking at the graphic that I'm using Corviknight with Sky Attack rather than Air Cutter, and the reason is because I don't have any Elite Charge TMs remaining. I actually used my final one on this Reshiram to get Fusion Flare since, to be honest, I'll probably end up using Reshiram a lot more often than I use the Corviknight, but unfortunately without Air Cutter, Corviknight was probably the worst Pokemon on this team, and this team has a literal Shadow Haxorus and Reshiram backline. So yeah, I definitely say if you don't have any Elite TMs, this Pokemon isn't really worth building, and well, quite a few of the Pokemon that just released in their Shadow forms require Legacy moves, so whilst I've actually built all of them, I can't really showcase most of them to their full potential because I'd have to have like 8 spare Elite TMs lying around, which, spoiler alert, I don't have. Now before we get into the question of the day, I want to remind everyone that the Battle of Spice is currently still going on. So far there have only been 10 entries, which I think is quite surprising, considering it is the Open Great League. This is usually the most popular league, and this is literally your final chance to qualify for the Battle of Spice World Championships that will be taking place later this season at the end of August. So if you do want to take part, make sure you get your submissions in ASAP. You will have until the leagues rotate on Tuesday, sort of going into Wednesday in the morning, so please do hurry up if you want to take part. But anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What has been your favorite Shadow Pokemon that you've caught during the Team Rocket event? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. So go into the first battle, leading Shadow Corviknight into Seeking. So of course, since we're on Sky Attack rather than Air Cutter, they will be able to outpace me here by a single turn and look to debuff me with an Icy Wind. So I'm going to tank the damage, then swap out into my Haxorus, and the opponent's going to come in with a Tinkaton. But wait a second, I'm running Earthquake specifically for this matchup to bait out Tinkaton and to completely nuke them off the screen there. We get the one shot with the Earthquake, and Haxorus is not done just yet because we've still got a Night Slash to throw into the Seeking, coming back in before grabbing a shield. Now we do have the Sky Attack loaded on the Corviknight, and if the opponent is expecting an Air Cutter, potentially they might end up no shielding this, in which case Sky Attack gets the KO. Their final Pokemon gonna be Ninetales. Shadow Reshiram, the hardest wall in the game, double resisting both the Weather Ball and the Energy Ball, and so the opponent concedes the match. But GG's to opponent there. Into next battle, we're gonna see a Shadow Kingdra in the lead. They're gonna swap out into Ninetales, and I just mentioned that Reshiram is the hardest wall to this Pokemon, but I actually come in with my Haxorus. Now this wasn't really through any sort of critical thinking here. I kind of just clicked on anything I could as fast as possible. This probably wasn't the best play, but we end up grabbing both shields. And Reshiram, when all shields are down, is absolutely devastating. I believe in the Open Great League, it will only lose against the meta, up against a Azumarill, and up against a Florges with a 1 shield advantage. But anyways, we're going to apply a lot of Dragon Breath, fast move pressure, although taking huge damage in the process up against Shadow Kingdra. We put them into range where certainly a Sky Attack will get the KO, and the opponent's going to come back in and throw a Charge Move straight away. The opponent fires off the Weather Ball. We can come back in with the Reshiram, and we are getting incredibly low right now. We are going to have to shield, even though Weather Ball is double resisted, and their final Pokemon is going to be Shadow Empoleon. Fusion Flare coming through, neutral damage, gets the KO there, and we can Dragon Breath, farm down the Ninetales from that range, living one more Ember, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to win there. Into the next battle, going to see an Electrode in the lead. So we're going to swap out into Haxorus, and I assume this is going to be a Wild Charge here, but actually Haxorus is super glassy. I probably have to shield that anyways, despite it being resisted. So here we've now got a huge energy advantage. We fire off the Night Slash, and we can fire off a second one straight away. Now, unfortunately, Night Slash non-stat damage doesn't really deal that much, even from a Shadow Haxorus, but the opponent, in trying to commit to a full farm down, allows me to reach yet another Night Slash, getting the Malamar incredibly low and grabbing both shields. Now I believe the opponent has back-to-back charge moves already, so at this point we're going to no shield the first as they full send the superpower before they swap out, banking the charge move and coming in with a Licky Licky. Now I can't really swap out of this matchup just yet. I kind of want to just stay in and force the opponent to throw some energy, and the opponent is going to farm up to 6 rollouts before full sending a Shadow Ball. We're going to come in with the Reshiram, and the opponent is going to farm up to another potential Shadow Ball. I'm going to shield here. Likely they do end up baiting, and they do just settle for a Body Slam. Again, again, this is going to be another body slam. What I expect is the combo play here. The opponent going to come back in with the Malamar. I'm able to read that and fire off the Fusion Flare, winning CMP, taking out the Malamar, which did have a lot of energy, and also reaching a Fusion Flare into Electrode, coming back in. This is super effective. It gets the knockout. Dragon Breaths not able to get the full farm down there. Unfortunately, that is a game inconsistency that is fixed on the new code, but I just don't really like playing on the new code. So as a result, we end up going down there because you just can't get simultaneous KOs with one-turn fast moves, and as a result, we lose that game. So that was a game that I could have won, or at least got a tie on if I played on the new code there. But GG's to that trainer. Into the next battle, we're going to see an Azumarill save swap, and of course, we don't really have an answer to this Pokemon in the back line. So we're going to stay in, we're able to grab a shield advantage, and now I'm going to swap into my Haxorus. Of course, Haxorus would typically be completely walled by Azumarill with every charge move option other than Earthquake, which we're running here, so we're going to full send it. The opponent also went for a Play Rough, which does allow me to overfarm by 1 extra Dragon Tail, and at this point, I'm looking to double shield. The opponent fires off the Ice Beam this time around. They come in with a Charger Bug. I'm going to swap out after banking a ton of energy. I believe Earthquake probably would have got the knockout there, however, I don't want to use that energy up just yet. Now, we're going to sacrifice the Corviknight, come in with the Reshiram, where unless they're on crunch, I should be able to completely wall their charge moves here. So of course, all shields are down, but Reshiram not really going to care too much. I was about to say not really going to pair too much. That doesn't make sense as a sentence. Anyways, we're going to go for the Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare, going to get the knockout. And the opponent actually going to come back in with Azumarill, which is absolutely fine with me, as now we can go for another Fusion Flare. That's resisted damage, but it gets the knockout. We stay in, we apply as much Dragon Breath pressure as possible. We come in with the Shadow Haxorus. Earthquake gets the one shot up against the shiny Shadow Marowak, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Shadow Kanto Ninetales in the lead. We're going to be swapping into our Haxorus, and we're met with a Jumpluff. Now, unfortunately for us, Jumpluff is going to be a pretty good answer to Haxorus because we can't full send an Earthquake, as that is going to be triple resisted. And these Night Slashes, as I mentioned already, non-stab, they don't really deal that much damage. So the opponent, well, if they want to, they can actually no-shield once again, and they can reach yet another charge move. And from this range, even an Edge Ball will comfortably take out the Haxorus. But I'm desperate for switch advantage, so I'm going to double shield, and they come back in with their Shadow Ninetales. But this is fine with me. We can probably grab a shield here with a Night Slash, and then come in with the Reshiram, where I will double resist everything they can throw. Of course, there is a possibility that they run Scorching Sands, but it's very unlikely. But you see, 2 Weather Balls will actually get Reshiram pretty low, so I'm actually not going to want to tank another Weather Ball here. Instead, we're going to fire off the Fusion Flare, resisted damage. This will get the knockout, but let's see, their final Pokemon going to be Shadow for Alligator, and the opponent, perfect catch there. I had to throw straight away. My switch clock wasn't quite up in time. The opponent catches the energy there, and unfortunately, Corviknight will not be able to tank 2 charge moves from this Shadow for Alligator. I'm going to need to make a catch, but because I'm not on Air Cutter, I'm just not going to reach the charge moves. So unfortunately, we tried to make the catch there, doesn't work out, and as a result, we concede the match. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Tinkaton in the lead. Now, we are going to see a Malamar save swap. I'm going straight for Sky Attack here. Sky Attack, going to connect, and I'm happy to no-shield the first charge move coming from the Malamar, and then I'm actually going to swap into my Haxorus. Now, Haxorus able to get the Dragon Tail through as we swap out there. Quite hard to see that, but we do get it through, which means I can Dragon Tail Funland down. Now, we've already seen this once here. We are running Earthquake specifically for Tinkaton, and we're actually able to outpace them as well. Do they expect it? Earthquake gets the one shot once again. Their final Pokemon gonna be an Altaria, but Haxorus again not done just yet. Night Slash gonna connect. I feel like the opponent has just kind of given up at this point. Honestly, if they shielded there, they still had a lot of play because Reshiram does not sponge the damage from those Dragon Breaths very comfortably, but landing the Night Slash, it's an easy farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's top on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Morpeko in the lead, and we're going to see a Shadow Annihilate on counter as their counter swap to my Haxorus. Now, unfortunately, again, because we're not on the new code there, on the new code, I should be getting the charge move off, whereas, unfortunately, an inconsistent game mechanic on the old code, that often does not work. Either way, I'm going to no-shield the first charge move, but the opponent full sends the close combat, easily getting the one shot, and also reaching a Rage Fist. And at this point, that should be game over. There's just not much I can do here. Unfortunately, whilst Dragon Breaths are going to add up, I'm not going to be able to Dragon Breath farm them down before the opponent reaches likely 3 charge moves, or honestly, just Thundershock farms me down. For some reason, Reshiram looking a lot more massive there, but either way, we're going to go for a Fusion Flare. I want to see what their final Pokemon is in the backline. It's going to be a Fearow, which we couldn't beat, and so unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, I'm going to see Credilli in the lead. So, we are going to just barely outpace them here to a Sky Attack before they can potentially debuff me with a Rock Tomb, and the opponent is going to no-shield that first move. Rock Tomb, we are going to clear the debuff straight away, swapping into a Haxorus, and we're met with a Sea King. Now, of course, Sea King pretty versatile this season, with Drill Run costing slightly less energy than in previous seasons. At this point, of course, they are likely going to go for an Icy Wind, debuffing my attack stat, and because they debuff me, now unfortunately I don't think a Night Slash will get the knockout. However, we do have back-to-back charge moves already loaded, so we can reach a second one straight away. Night Slash, number 2, gets them incredibly low, but they do just barely hang on. Now, at this point, we're going to come back in with the Shadow Corviknight, the opponent going to go for the Icy Wind, and we can Sand Attack farm them down. I'm going to swap out into Reshiram, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Jellicent. Of course, they can just settle for a Surf here. Surf is going to deal big damage, neutral damage in this matchup. They swap back into Credilli, and honestly, I can't really remember how much energy they had, so I do throw here. I don't take any risk. However, unfortunately, that leaves me 1 energy shy of reaching the Draco Meteor. Surf gets the KO, but Corviknight will be able to reach a Sky Attack, and from this range, Sky Attack should be enough damage to take out the Jellicent. And I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, I can see Melmetal in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for me. However, it's going to be, like, reasonably neutral here because, of course, the opponent is hitting full super effective damage with the Thunder Shocks, but likewise, these Sand Attacks are also hitting full super effective. Also, our charge moves are going to be neutral, at least with the payback. So, we grab a shield there with the payback, and then we swap into our Haxorus. I'm going to shield as they full send another Dynamic Punch, and then they swap out into Altaria. So potentially the opponent might also be running a Steel Double Dragon team here, with Altaria as their first dragon, maybe Kingdra or something as a pretty common second dragon there. Either way, we go for Night Slash again, and unfortunately just barely not able to Dragon Tail farm them down. But either way, Sky Attack going to get the knockout. I'm going to come in with the Reshiram, get that Dragon Breath farm down, and it is going to be a Shadow Kingdra. And unfortunately for me, you can see my Dragon Breaths aren't dealing anywhere near as much damage as theirs are. They fire off the Swift. I'm going to bank the energy, swap into Corviknight, hoping to reach a Sky Attack, but the opponent, perfect charge move timing there, throwing just as we're reaching the Sky Attack. Unfortunately, all shields are down. I'd need to Dragon Breath farm them down, and even then, if we get to back-to-back Fusion Flares, it's double resisted into the Shadow Kingdra, we would not get the knockout, and so unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, I can see a Charger Bug in the lead. Not the best matchup for the Corviknight, so we're going to swapping into our Shadow Haxorus. Here, we're going to farm up a ton of energy, fire off the Night Slash, gotta be shielded, and we will force a shield there, and force them to throw pretty much straight away, because we were at another Night Slash. Now, we're going to come in with the Corviknight, and let's see what charge moves they're on. We're going to no-shield the first move anyways. The opponent, going to go for a Trailblaze there, which is double resisted. Yes, it does boost up their attack stat, however, double resisted, I don't know if that really helps them that much. Sky Attack gets the knockout. We can reach another Sky Attack into the Charger while coming back in. Sky Attack likely going to be no-shielded, and now I swap into my Shadow Reshiram, where of course we can tank any move they throw. I'm going to no-shield, they go for a Discharge, and their final Pokemon is Superior, a Pokemon that I completely wall here if they are on Leaf Tornado rather than Aerial Ace. Either way, I'm not going to take the risk, because if they go for a Frenzy Plant whilst being double resisted, that probably KOs from about half health anyways, so we're going to go for the Fusion Flare here, and this should be game over. The opponent will be able to reach a charge move from that Charger Bug, however, we do still have a shield in play. We can just safely shield up the charge move, we can go for the Dragon Breath farm down, taking out the Charger Bug, and so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, I'm going to see a Shadow Sableye in the lead. So we're going to stay in this matchup, at least initially here. The opponent is going to fire off that charge move straight away. The opponent going to go for a Foul Play, which does honestly quite a lot of damage into the Shadow Corviknight. I'm going to fire back with a Sky Attack. Sky Attack is going to be shielded, and now I safe swap into my Shadow Reshiram. Unfortunately, I'm met with a Carbink. Now, this is really unfortunate because basically every other game I used Haxorus as my safe swap. This time around, I swapped into Reshiram, and unfortunately, just not a great position to be in at all. Gonna come in with the Shadow Haxorus here. We do still have Earthquake, and I don't really expect the opponent to shield an Earthquake here, so I am gonna look to try and just full send it straight away. So of course, going for the Earthquake, please just let this move go through. Earthquake gets the KO there. But the opponent's going to have a second fairy type in the form of Azumarill, which is certainly not ideal for us. Even these bubbles resisted damage, dealing big damage up against the Shadow Haxorus. Earthquake connects, it does decent damage as well, but the game is certainly over here. The opponent going to go for the foul play, get the knockout, Shadow Claw farming down the Haxorus, and unfortunately I lose that game. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, I can see Altaria in the lead. So this is going to be a little bit of a tricky matchup here, just because Sky Attacks, I don't think are quite going to get the two shot here up against the Altaria. And of course, these Sand Attacks are double resisted, whereas the Dragon Breaths are single resisted, and Flamethrower is going to hit for super effective. So I'm actually going to shield the first move here. I can outpace them just slightly here to another Sky Attack, and then I will actually try and look to snipe with my Shadow Haxorus, but unfortunately, they barely hang on. Now, have they reacted in time? Nope, they go for a Flamethrower once again, which is fine with me, and now they come in with a Shadow Kanto Ninetales. I'm going to fire off the Night Slash, going to be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent is going to look to overfarm before throwing some energy. Of course, Weather Ball going to get the knockout from that range, but we can come in with the Shadow Reshiram, and I don't need to shield anything. Now, there probably is a Ninetales user out there using Scorching Sands that would just completely destroy us, but for now, we're looking to be in a great position. Still not going to bother shielding, and the opponent's going to come in with Empoleon. I'm going straight for Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare, going to connect. That is not even a Shadow Empoleon there, but it nearly gets the one shot. We can Dragon Breath, farm down the Ninetales, Dragon Breath, farm down Altaria as well, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, I'm going to see Mantine in the lead. So again, going to be a slightly awkward matchup for us, just because, like with the Altaria, Sky Attack is not going to be enough damage to two-shot them, whereas I think Water Pulse will actually get the two-shot, just because I feel like these Wii attacks are going to add up a little bit more. Water Pulse, you can see, yeah, does comfortably more damage there. I'm going to look to try and swap out and catch a Water Pulse. Have we just caught this? Water Pulse, yes, it is the Water Pulse. That still does over half our remaining HP. However, of course, if we caught a Twister, that would have been really bad for me. But anyways, Night Slash, gotta be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent is still gonna throw some energy. So this is fine with me. We grabbed the shield advantage there. We are fairly low on the Corviknight, but I believe we have some energy there on the Corviknight. Either way, we are gonna see a Licky coming in. So at this point, of course, I'm gonna have to start shielding. The opponent is just gonna go straight for a Body Slam there. I'm gonna look to full send. Nope, never mind. I was gonna full send, but no, actually instead, we're going to snipe with a Sky Attack from the Licky. I'm hoping the opponent doesn't overfarm by too much, but the opponent, very smart here, going to look to overfarm, realizing Sand Attacks not really adding up that much, and unfortunately, I'm not able to Dragon Breath farm them down before they do reach another Body Slam. So at this point, we are very low. They're going to come in with a Galarian Stunfisk, and wait a second here. We've got Fusion Flare. That does huge damage, but unfortunately, they barely hang on. Here, I throw at the last second. This is a CP tie. I need them to be a 1 HP, but they weren't quite there just yet, which means they're able to shield, they're able to hang on. Rockside gets the knockout, and unfortunately, I lose that game. But GG's up on there into, I believe, the final battle of this video, leading into a Poliwrath, so that is going to be a decent matchup for the Shadow Corviknight, and the opponent is going to be swapping into a Walrein. Now, I don't have a great response to this Pokemon here, so I'm going to stay in, chip with a Sky Attack, and if they no-shield this, I will then swap into my Reshiram. The opponent going to no-shield, we can now come in with the Reshiram, I can shield once, and I should be able to Dragon Breath farm them down before they reach back-to-back Ice School Spears. So we shield the first one there, can we get the farm down? Yes, we're able to do so, and let's see, they're going to come back in with a Clodsire, so we're going to go for a Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare, even neutral damage, will be enough damage to two-shot them, so we're going to fire off a second Fusion Flare here, and then we will look to overfarm. The opponent is going to overfarm, we swap out, we catch the Charge Move onto our Shadow Corviknight, and that is going to be a Stone Edge. Stone Edge gets the knockout. Now, I should be able to come in with my Haxorus. We do still have to worry about the Poliwrath, though, so at this point, the opponent should be reaching a Charge Move here, but I'm just going to look to overfarm. I realize if Poliwrath happens to be on counter, I need as much energy as possible, or if they're on Mudshot, I need to full send an Earthquake here. So Earthquake coming through, Earthquake not respected, the opponent concedes the match, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.